My father was a fourth-generation farmer, grew up in the Great Depression, and he didn't play polo or golf either. But what he did do was get up at 4 a.m. every morning and milk the cows. And after he was done with his farm chores, he went to school or he went to work. Unfortunately, and he loved fresh country air. So when I was growing up, every morning he would come into every evening he would come into my room, he would open the window so that I could get fresh air all night, because he associated fresh air with good health, with resiliency, with a good night's rest, and waking up the next morning ready to go to work. Now, unfortunately for my father, when he graduated from high school, the economies of farming weren't so good. The age of the small farm was over, and farming was there was much consolidation going on where you had to go big or get out. And he ended up taking a job that had a lot of benefits. All expenses, business trip was paid to the Korean War. But he was employed at least. And fortunately, he lived through that and came home. But there were to be no fifth-generation farmers in his family. All of his siblings or their spouses went into manufacturing, because manufacturing, after the war, the U.S. was the global leader, because most of the other global manufacturing plants had been destroyed in the war. And it was a great time to be in manufacturing, but my father ran into some roadblocks in manufacturing. He found that his high school degree was not enough to get him promoted. And so he encouraged me to go to college. And he brought home information from the corporate library, encouraging me, showing me how I could increase my salary by going to college, and things that I could learn from to prepare me better for the professional world. So my fresh air became fresh ideas, fresh skills, fresh learning. And I thought when I went to college and I picked up accounting and technical skills that I was all set to launch myself, to take that fresh air that I had and to go into the career world. Unfortunately, the career world changed somewhat from my time to my father's time. My father had lifetime employment, worked for the same company for 35 years, got a golden parachute to retire early at 55, and never worked more than 40-hour work weeks. Also, anytime he needed reskilling, he got on-the-job training during work hours, and by the way, he also got a pension. My career was somewhat different, right? Early on in my career, workload soon increased. We were told that to be a professional, we had to work 55 hours a week. And I was on projects during my lifetime in the private sector of up to 80 hours a week. And because we were working so much, we had less time to train. And also, as we got older, of course, training budgets decreased, because companies started to think, you know, if I train my employees with new skills, they'll leave, right? It's also subject to right-sizing, downsizing, and reductions in force. Oh, you thought that was a new term, right? Reductions in force? No, it's not. It's been going on for years. And now, today, we face changes in jobs and careers caused by artificial intelligence and new automation technologies. And jobs and careers are changing faster than ever before. Baby boomers average 12 job changes in their career. That's job changes. We don't know how many occupation changes or how many career changes they had to make, but the average, the guess is every 3 or 4 job changes equals one career change, actually changing an occupation, going from one skill, from being a computer programmer to being a manager, or from being an artist to being a production worker, etc. Gen Z, it's expected that they're going to change jobs 16 to 17 times. That means that they may change careers 5 to 7 times. World Economic Forum, Future of Jobs report from this January. 59% of workers will need retraining by 2030. 11% may not receive the training they need and may become unemployed. 85% of employers plan to upskill their staff, but 40% of employers also expect to lay off people that don't have the skills that they need. AI is expected to transform 86% of businesses by 2030, but many businesses are not prepared for this. In my father's day, things changed. Back in the early days of manufacturing, of course, there was not much concern given to pollution or the byproducts of manufacturing. They were in a linear economy where they would take raw materials, they would make it into a product, and then they would sell the product, which would be used by people, and then eventually the product would be disposed of and it would end up in the dump or in pollution. During my father's career, things started to change. People started to see these pollutants, that the air was being polluted, that we were losing fresh air. And so there was more of an emphasis on a new circular economy, where if we made a product that we tried to keep it in the system, keep it in use so that it wouldn't have to go in the dump, or we tried to address the byproducts of the product that might cause polluted air. And so we tried to focus on reuse, remake, and recycling as much as possible.
Hold, please.
But technology, we'll be able to cut this out, right? I guess I should keep talking, because one of the most entertaining things of this has been is the transcriptions that go over the top, right? That's where most of the jokes came from, right? See, as a technology teacher, this always happens to me. Whenever I go to a conference, I have technology problems to speak. I always have problems. So I guess it's to get me back. Okay. So in my career, I came to see or to feel that sometimes the human resource part of my career was still back in a linear economy, where we would be taken as young, aspiring high school graduates. We would go to college or we would learn a trade, and we would go to be employed by a corporation. And corporations or firms would use us until all of a sudden our skills atrophied for some reason. And then they would dispose of us through reductions in forces. And then eventually, we would become unemployed. And I don't mean to, by this graphic, I don't mean to equate people with pollution, but if you've ever been unemployed, like I was once, if you've ever been downsized, right-sized, or riffed, and sent to the unemployment line, you may feel like trash, as I did. You may feel that you were a pollutant. But we could change this too through the same process by looking at a circular economy for human capital or human resources, where we try to maximize the extent to which we keep people employed. Corporations could offer more on-the-job training, more retraining while we're working. If we do have to make a career or major change, we could be remade through a new degree or through a new certification. Or even if we do end up unemployed, we could improve the unemployment process where we give people better or newer skills so that they could go back into the economy and they could have the same quality of job and make the same amount of money or more than before they were unemployed. So for us as individuals, how can we get this clean air? How can we get this new, fresh air? We need to think differently. Lifetime employment is probably not coming back, right? We need to continuously evaluate our career environment and the skill changes that are required to stay employed, keep us engaged and learning. And we need to skill differently. We need to be proactive, embrace reskilling. We can do this by using artificial intelligence. We can use artificial intelligence against itself, right? We all think that artificial intelligence is here to take away our jobs. But it can actually help us do our jobs better. We can identify skill gaps and get recommended training from artificial intelligence. We can create personalized learning experiences to help us get us where we want to go. We can use it to augment the skills that we have now to help us do our jobs better and to work smarter instead of harder. What about corporations? What could they do? Think differently too. People need to be treated as long-term capital assets, not short-term expenses. And we need to create continuous learning environments in our organizations and firms. And skill differently. Corporations also need to skill differently. Build learning into the flow of work. It should be part of our daily jobs. Encourage just-in-time learning as well as long-term learning. And track and reward learning as a business activity and not an expense. Example of this is Infosys, a technology consulting firm. They've implemented an AI-driven learning platform where they can upskill their employees in AI. Employees are spending an average of 30 minutes a day upskilling, and the training is integrated into their current work process so that nobody has to spend any extra hours outside of work, but just as part of the job that they're doing. What about government? Can government give us more clean air? Yes, they can, but they have to think differently too. Again, people are assets, not expenses. And we need to maximize long-term revenue instead of minimizing short-term expenses. Again, if I'm employed and I'm making money, the government's taxing me. That's more revenue. If I'm unemployed, the government doesn't get my tax revenue. If I'm working an underpaid job, the government, again, gets less tax revenues. Government needs to incentivize differently. Training investments by corporations should be capitalized and not expensed, again, by recognizing people as an asset, by recognizing training as fresh air, as training as an asset, as a long-term asset that lasts longer than a year. By changing our accounting, we can change the way corporations think about training. Tax laws. Incentivations for tax laws. A lot of times these things are put on the books and the amounts don't change for years. But of course tuition and training costs stay the same, right? No. 1981, I entered the workforce. My company had an educational assistance plan. This means that I could get $5,250 a year in university training tax-free. And I went to graduate school. Great. I could have bought 10 3-hour courses for that money. Could have gotten 10 free courses for that money in the year if I could take that many. Today, 2025, what is the tax limit on educational assistance plans? It's still $5,250. If you go to the university, that private university up the road here, you know how many graduate management courses, that 3-hour graduate management courses that will get you? It will not even get you one. Individual reskilling costs are a business expense. Right now, if I go to Las Vegas and I spend $5,000, I get no tax deduction. If I go to a conference and I spend $5,000 to learn and to be real skilled, I get no tax deduction. Because the Tax Act of 2017 got rid of miscellaneous education expenses deductions. Unemployment. One time in my career, in spite of all my retraining, I was riffed. 30% of our department was cut in one day, and we were told, you're all doing a great job, we're sorry, but we're cutting all these projects, and 30% of you are going out the door. And so I was unemployed. So I got my first experience with the New York State unemployment. And so I went in, and after I got qualified, you have to get qualified first before you can do anything. You have to be out of a job for a week. You have to give them a resume. They got to approve your resume, and da-da-da-da-da, so time goes on. Anyway, I said, okay, I see lots of jobs in my career field that are looking for this certification. Can you help me get this certification? Well, no, but we can give you Word training, Microsoft Word training, word processing training. Thank you, New York State, for your help. You know, I grew up with a lot of farmers, and they used to tell this story. There was a lottery, and there were 3 winners in this lottery: a doctor, a lawyer, and a farmer. And there was a press conference held, and each one of them was supposed to get up and say what they were going to do with their $10 million that they won. The doctor got up, and he said, they asked him, what are you going to do with your $10 million? He said, I'm going to create a free medical clinic so I can help people out that don't have enough money to access medical care. The lawyer got up and they said, what are you going to do with your $10 million? I'm going to create a free legal clinic so that they can give out free legal advice to those who can't afford it. The farmer got up. They said, what are you going to do with your $10 million? The farmer said, I'm just going to keep farming till it's all used up. So, unfortunately, we can't just keep working until our skills are all used up. We need to create fresh air by creating a circular economy for human capital. We need to reimagine workforce sustainability in the artificial intelligence age by 1, individually taking deep breaths of fresh air, of retraining, of new skills, and also encouraging industry and government to help clear the air and provide new fresh air for all of us. Thank you.